Cowboy brought her home, thinking she was injured. Later realized it was an Apache marriage ritual. Sam McAllister was a man of habit. Every evening, just as the sun dipped low behind the distant mountains, he rode out on his old horse, Dusty, to check the fences and the cattle across his ranch. The land was vast and open, stretching for miles under a sky that seemed to go on forever. Sam loved this time of the day, when the world felt quiet and calm, and the only sounds were the soft creaking of his saddle and the distant lowing of cows. It was a peaceful life, but one that also required constant attention and care. Out here, a small problem could turn into a big one very quickly. On this particular evening, the sky was painted with shades of orange, pink, and purple. Sam guided Dusty along a narrow trail near the edge of a stream that curved through a small valley. The water glistened in the fading light, reflecting the sky like a mirror. The smell of wet earth and sagebrush filled the air, and for a moment, everything seemed calm and ordinary. But as Sam rounded a bend near the stream, he saw something that made him freeze in place. Lying near the water was a young woman. At first he thought she might be hurt. She wasn't moving and her clothing was dusty and torn in places. Sam's heart skipped a beat. He had seen enough accidents on the ranch to know that any person or animal could be in real trouble. Without thinking twice, he urged Dusty forward, carefully approaching her. "Hey, are you okay?" Sam called softly, trying not to startle her. The woman stirred slightly but didn't speak. Her dark hair fell over her face, and Sam could see that she was pale, her breathing uneven. He looked around quickly. There was no one else nearby, and the landscape stretched empty and silent in all directions. It seemed impossible that someone could be here and not get noticed for hours or even days. Sam dismounted and walked cautiously toward her. As he got closer, he noticed small details that made him more certain she needed help. Her eyes fluttered open, revealing a calm but tired gaze. Her hands were calloused, suggesting she was used to hard work or a life outdoors. Despite the dust and minor cuts on her skin, she didn't cry out or panic. There was a quiet strength about her, even in her vulnerable state. "I'm going to help you," Sam said gently. "You're safe now." There were small scratches on her arms and legs, and her clothes were damp and dirty from the stream, but nothing seemed life-threatening. Still, she looked weak, as if she hadn't eaten or rested properly for days. Sam's mind raced. Who was she? Where had she come from? Why was she alone out here? There were no roads nearby, and the nearest town was miles away. But thinking about it made no difference right now. She needed help, and he could provide that. He gently helped her to her feet, and she didn't resist. She leaned slightly on him, showing both trust and weariness. Sam adjusted his grip to support her better. "Don't worry, I'll get you somewhere safe," he said. "Just hang on." She sat silently, holding herself upright but not offering any words. Sam climbed up behind her to guide Dusty along the trail back to the ranch. The journey was quiet except for the sound of Dusty's hooves on the soft ground and the faint rustling of leaves in the wind. Sam didn't ask questions. Right now, he just needed to get her home. As they rode, Sam studied her more closely. She had a serene presence that was almost unusual. Even in what he assumed was fear or discomfort, there was a calmness about her that made him feel that she might be stronger than she seemed. Her eyes, dark and deep, seemed to look beyond the ordinary world, as if she carried knowledge or experiences he could not imagine. Sam felt a strange mix of curiosity and respect. The sun sank lower and shadows stretched across the land. The air grew cooler, and Sam noticed that she shivered slightly. He took off his own jacket and draped it over her shoulders, making sure she was covered. She didn't speak, but she allowed him to do this, and for some reason, Sam felt a quiet gratitude from her glance. It was a small acknowledgement, but it mattered. Sam also noticed something else. The woman moved in a careful, deliberate way, as if she was aware of everything around her. Her movements were graceful, almost like a dance, even though she was weak from exhaustion. He wondered how she had gotten here alone. It wasn't easy to travel across this rough land without someone knowing. The thought made him even more determined to protect her. As the ranch finally came into view, the sun dipped behind the mountains, leaving a soft, dusky glow over the homestead. Smoke rose from the chimney of Sam's house, and lights glimmered from the windows. The sight gave him a small sense of relief. Help was close now. He could finally give her food, water, and a safe place to rest. When they reached the porch, Sam dismounted and gently helped her down. She stepped onto the wooden boards with care, her feet barely making a sound. Sam guided her inside, where the warmth from the fireplace immediately touched her chilled skin. He offered her a chair and a warm drink, which she accepted quietly. Even in her silence, Sam felt a connection forming. He didn't know her story, and she didn't seem ready to tell it yet. But in that moment, there was an understanding between them. He had saved her, or at least he had tried to, and she had accepted that help. It was a beginning, even if neither of them realized what it might grow into. As Sam prepared a small meal, he couldn't stop thinking about her. He wondered where she had come from, what had brought her to this isolated part of the land, and why she had been alone. He had helped many people in his life, but something about her was different. There was a quiet dignity in her presence, a strength he hadn't expected. She ate slowly, without a word, but Sam could see that she was beginning to recover. Her hands, once trembling, were steadier now. Her eyes seemed brighter, and when she looked at him briefly, there was a small, faint smile that made him feel a warmth he hadn't expected. Sam realized that saving someone wasn't always just about fixing what was broken. Sometimes, it was about offering patience, understanding, and kindness. He didn't know what the next day would bring, but he was certain of one thing. He would make sure she was safe, no matter what. And somehow, even in that quiet evening, the ranch felt a little less empty and a little more alive. The night passed quietly at the McAllister homestead. Outside, the wind whispered through the tall grasses, and the stars shone brightly above the open plains. Inside, the fireplace crackled softly, casting warm, dancing shadows across the wooden walls. Sam McAllister lay awake for hours, listening to the soft breathing of the young woman as she slept in the spare room. He couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was she? Where had she come from? And why had she been alone in such a vast, empty place? By morning, the first rays of sunlight filtered through the window, painting the room in shades of gold. The woman was already awake, sitting quietly by the window. She looked out at the ranch with calm, thoughtful eyes, her fingers tracing the wooden frame of the sill. Sam watched her silently for a moment. She didn't speak, didn't ask questions, yet her presence seemed to fill the room in a way that was hard to describe. He stepped forward carefully, not wanting to startle her. "Good morning," he said softly. She turned her head slowly and met his gaze. Her eyes were steady yet gentle, and for a moment Sam felt as if she understood him without words. "Would you like some breakfast?" he asked. She nodded slightly, and Sam smiled. He led her to the kitchen, where the aroma of fresh bread and coffee filled the air. He prepared a simple meal, eggs, toast, and warm milk, and placed it in front of her. She began eating slowly, carefully, as if savoring each bite. Sam noticed that she moved with grace and patience, even in these ordinary moments. As she ate, Sam tried to make small conversation. "Do you know where you are?" he asked gently. She shook her head, her long hair falling over her shoulders. "I don't know," she said softly in broken English. Sam nodded, understanding that communication would take time. After breakfast, Sam showed her around the ranch. He pointed out the barn, the pens for the cattle, and the fields that stretched far into the distance. She listened quietly, watching everything with curiosity. Occasionally, she asked questions in her soft voice, and Sam answered as best he could. He noticed that she paid attention to details he sometimes overlooked, the way the cattle moved, the patterns of the clouds, even the subtle changes in the wind. As the day grew warmer, Sam decided to take her to the stream where he had found her. He thought it might help her feel more comfortable, familiarizing her with the place where her journey had begun. They walked slowly, side by side, and he noticed small things about her. She had a careful, thoughtful way of moving, as if she was aware of every sound and every step. There was a quiet strength in her, a resilience that impressed him more with each passing moment. When they reached the stream, she paused and knelt by the water. She touched it gently, letting the coolness run over her hands. Then she sat quietly on a nearby rock, gazing at the flowing water. Sam didn't speak immediately. He understood that some things were best observed in silence. After a few minutes, she looked up at him and gave a small, faint smile. It was a simple gesture, yet it made Sam feel a connection he could not explain. Back at the ranch, the day passed with simple, ordinary tasks. She helped Sam feed the chickens and gather eggs, moving with a quiet efficiency. Though her English was limited, they found ways to communicate through gestures and smiles. Sam realized that sometimes actions spoke louder than words. He began to admire her patience and the calm way she approached even the smallest chores. By afternoon, Sam noticed something unusual. The woman began arranging small objects around the house, stones, feathers, and pieces of wood into careful patterns. At first, he thought she was simply organizing, but the patterns were deliberate and intricate. She seemed to be performing a ritual of some kind, her movements precise and respectful. Sam watched with curiosity, unsure of what it meant. He didn't want to interfere, but he also wanted to understand. "Is this important to you?" he asked gently. She looked up at him and nodded slowly. "Yes," she said softly, "my people." Sam didn't push further. He realized that this was part of her world, a part of her identity that he might never fully understand, but he wanted to respect it. As evening approached, Sam began preparing dinner. The young woman sat nearby, watching him move around the kitchen. Sometimes she offered a hand, and together they prepared a simple meal of roasted vegetables and fresh bread. The atmosphere was quiet but comfortable, filled with a sense of shared purpose. Sam felt a growing respect for her, not just for her beauty or her grace, but for her quiet strength and her connection to the world around her. After dinner, they sat by the fireplace. The woman seemed more relaxed now, her initial fear and hesitation replaced by a calm curiosity. She began to hum a soft tune, a melody that seemed unfamiliar yet soothing. Sam listened, captivated by the sound. It was unlike anything he had heard before, a song that carried a sense of history and meaning he could not fully grasp. He realized that she carried her culture and her heritage with her, even in this small, remote place. Over the next few days, Sam continued to learn more about her habits and customs. She had her own way of doing things, small rituals in the morning, careful preparation of meals, quiet moments of reflection by the stream. At first, he didn't understand them, but he began to see a pattern. These rituals were important to her, a way of connecting with her past and her people. Sam felt honored to witness them and tried to accommodate her needs as best he could. Meanwhile, the ranch hands began to notice her presence. They were cautious at first, unsure of who she was or why she had appeared on the property. But as they saw her calm nature and her willingness to help with chores, their curiosity turned into admiration. She never complained, never caused trouble, and gradually earned their respect. Even Dusty, the old horse, seemed to recognize her gentle presence, allowing her to approach without hesitation. Despite the calm days, Sam couldn't shake a feeling of mystery. There was something about her that he couldn't quite understand, something that suggested a story deeper than the one he had imagined. He wondered about her family, her home, and the journey that had brought her to this remote ranch. But he also realized that some answers would come in time. Patience, he thought, was as important as courage. One morning, as they walked along the stream again, Sam noticed her looking at him differently. There was a sense of purpose in her eyes, a quiet determination that he had not seen before. She picked up a small stone and placed it carefully in the water, then looked at him with a faint smile. Sam felt a strange mix of surprise and respect. He didn't know what it meant yet, but he sensed that her presence in his life was changing things, slowly, quietly, in ways he could not predict. By the end of the week, a routine had formed. She had become a quiet part of the ranch, moving through the spaces with grace and ease. Sam found himself thinking about her more often, not just as someone he had rescued, but as a person with her own story, her own culture, and her own strength. He admired her patience, her resilience, and the way she seemed to connect with the land and the people around her. Yet despite this growing bond, Sam still didn't fully understand her. There were moments of silence, small gestures and glances that hinted at a deeper story. He knew that someday the truth would reveal itself, and when it did, it would change everything. For now, he focused on the present, on keeping her safe, on learning from her, and on sharing simple, quiet moments together in the vast, open world of the ranch. As night fell again, the young woman sat by the fire, wrapping herself in the jacket Sam had given her. He watched her quietly, feeling a mix of admiration, curiosity, and protectiveness. He didn't know what the future held, but he knew that her arrival had brought a new light to the ranch, a light that was gentle, mysterious, and impossible to ignore. And in that quiet evening, with the stars shining above and the fire crackling softly, Sam realized that some meetings, no matter how unexpected, were meant to change a life forever. Days passed at the McAllister Ranch, each one blending quietly into the next. The young woman had begun to settle into the rhythms of ranch life, though she still kept much of herself to herself. She had her own routines, small rituals she performed in the morning and evening, moments of quiet reflection by the stream, and careful ways of tending to chores. Sam observed her closely, trying to understand the subtle patterns of her behavior. He realized that she carried her culture and her traditions with her, even in this remote place, and that they were an essential part of who she was. One morning, as the sun rose over the hills and painted the sky with shades of orange and pink, Sam found her arranging small objects on a flat rock near the stream. There were stones, feathers, and pieces of wood placed in a deliberate pattern. He had seen her do similar things before, but today her movements seemed even more precise, more deliberate. He watched from a distance, curious but careful not to disturb her. "What are you doing?" he finally asked, keeping his voice gentle. She looked up at him and smiled faintly. "My people," she said softly, her words slow and careful. Sam nodded, sensing that this was something important to her, though he did not yet understand why. Sam had always respected the ways of others, but he realized that he was witnessing something different here, something deeper than simple habits. It was a ritual, a meaningful act rooted in a culture he knew little about. He wondered if she would be upset by his presence, but she simply continued, acknowledging him with a small nod before returning to her work. Later that day, Sam attempted to introduce her to some of the routines of the ranch. He taught her how to check the fences, tend the livestock, and prepare basic meals. She followed his instructions carefully, often improving on the techniques he showed her. Her movements were precise, her focus unwavering, and her quiet presence made the ranch feel calm and ordered. Even Dusty, the old horse, seemed to sense her patience and gentleness, allowing her to approach and groom him without hesitation. Despite this growing familiarity, Sam noticed moments of strangeness. Sometimes she would pause suddenly, as if sensing something in the air that he could not. She would touch a tree, a stone, or the ground, and then continue as if nothing had happened. Sam tried to ignore these moments at first, but they intrigued him. There was a layer to her life, a depth that he could not yet see, and it made him wonder about her past and her people. One afternoon, while they were gathering eggs from the chicken coop, she suddenly stopped and looked around, her eyes sharp and focused. Sam followed her gaze, but he saw nothing unusual. "Is something wrong?" he asked. "No," she said softly, watching careful. As the week progressed, small incidents began to reveal more about her. One evening, as Sam prepared dinner, she arranged a small set of stones on the kitchen table, creating a pattern he did not recognize. He asked her about it, but she only shook her head, smiling quietly. Later, he learned that the patterns were part of a symbolic language, a way of expressing ideas and intentions without words. Sam realized that he had stumbled into a world rich with meaning, far beyond the simple life of the ranch. The ranch hands also began to notice unusual behaviors. At first, they were cautious, unsure of how to interact with her. But as days passed, they saw that she was helpful, respectful, and gentle. She carried herself with dignity and calm, never causing trouble, never demanding attention. Gradually, they grew to trust her presence, even admiring her quiet strength. Her mysterious habits, which had seemed odd at first, became part of the rhythm of life on the ranch. One afternoon, while Sam and the young woman were repairing a section of fence, he noticed her pause and look at him intently. "What is it?" he asked. She hesitated, then reached out and touched his hand lightly. It was a simple gesture, but Sam felt a warmth he could not explain. There was meaning in that touch, something beyond friendship, something connected to the rituals and traditions she carried with her. Sam felt a mix of confusion and curiosity. He wanted to understand, but he also realized that he must be patient. That evening, after the chores were done, they sat near the fireplace. The young woman placed small stones in a pattern on the hearth, moving her hands with care and concentration. Sam watched, fascinated. He realized that these actions were deliberate, meaningful, and deeply personal. Each movement carried intention, and each placement seemed to communicate something only she could understand. As the night grew darker, Sam felt a growing sense of respect for her. He realized that her presence was not just a mystery to solve, but a lesson to be learned. She had brought her culture, her history, and her strength into his life, and he was beginning to see the world through her eyes. He thought about the journey that had brought her to the ranch, and he felt a mixture of awe and humility. Over the next few days, subtle changes began to appear. She would occasionally mimic small gestures he made, learning quickly but always adding her own touch. Her habits blended with the routines of the ranch, creating a rhythm that was both familiar and new. Sam found himself looking forward to each day, curious about what he would learn, what new insights she might reveal, and how her presence would continue to change the quiet ranch life. Then one afternoon, Sam noticed something remarkable. She had placed a circle of stones in a clearing near the stream, surrounding a small wooden figure she had carved herself. The pattern was intricate, precise, and beautiful. Sam was struck by the care and attention she had put into it. "What does this mean?" he asked, trying to keep his tone gentle. She looked at him, her eyes calm and thoughtful. "Important for choosing," she said softly. Sam frowned slightly, puzzled. Choosing what? He realized he was entering a world of meaning he had never encountered, a world of symbolism and ritual that he could not fully understand. Despite his confusion, Sam did not interrupt her. He watched quietly as she finished the arrangement, placing the last stone with careful precision. Then she stepped back, surveying her work. There was pride in her posture, a sense of accomplishment and purpose. Sam felt a mixture of admiration and curiosity. He wanted to ask more questions, but he also sensed that it was not his place to rush her. That night, Sam lay awake again, thinking about the events of the day. The woman had entered his life unexpectedly, bringing with her a mystery he could not yet unravel. Her rituals, her careful movements, and her quiet strength fascinated him. He realized that there was much more to her than he had initially understood. She was not just someone he had rescued. She was someone with a culture, a history, and a purpose that he had yet to comprehend. The days continued in this way, simple, quiet, and filled with small discoveries. Sam learned to respect her space, to observe without judgment, and to listen when she spoke, even in broken English. The young woman, in turn, began to trust him more, showing signs of comfort and acceptance in the routines of ranch life. Their bond grew slowly, built on mutual respect and patience rather than words alone. Then, one morning, a traveling anthropologist arrived at the ranch. She had heard stories of the strange and beautiful rituals being performed near the stream and wanted to observe them firsthand. Sam introduced her to the young woman, and the anthropologist immediately recognized the significance of what she saw. "This is remarkable," the anthropologist said quietly. "She is performing a traditional courtship ritual. You may not realize it, but she has chosen you." Sam was stunned. He stared at the young woman, then back at the anthropologist. He had thought he was helping someone in need, but now he realized that the quiet gestures, the patterns of stones, and the careful rituals had a meaning far deeper than he had ever imagined. The revelation changed everything. Sam felt a mix of surprise, embarrassment, and awe. He had unknowingly become part of a tradition that had been practiced for generations, a ritual that carried respect, care, and intention. He looked at the young woman, who met his gaze with calm eyes and a faint, knowing smile. In that moment, Sam understood that life had a way of surprising him, of teaching him lessons he could never anticipate. The young woman had brought with her not only her presence but a bridge between two very different worlds. And he realized that patience, respect, and openness were the keys to understanding her, and the life she represented. The morning air at the McAllister Ranch was crisp and clear. Sam McAllister woke early, as he always did, but that day a sense of anticipation hung over him. The events of the previous week had left him both curious and uneasy. He had begun to understand that the young woman he had rescued was unlike anyone he had ever met. Her quiet strength, her careful rituals, and her deep connection to the land all suggested a life shaped by customs and traditions he barely knew. That day, a traveling anthropologist had arrived at the ranch, drawn by stories of the unusual and beautiful rituals performed near the stream. Sam introduced her to the young woman, who watched the new visitor with calm, careful eyes. The anthropologist, a woman named Dr. Helen Royce, was experienced in observing indigenous cultures, and her keen interest immediately made Sam realize that this was not an ordinary visit. Dr. Royce studied the patterns of stones, feathers, and wooden carvings that the young woman had created. She nodded thoughtfully, her eyes lighting up with recognition. "These are courtship rituals," she explained gently, looking at Sam. "She is not injured and she is not lost. She has chosen you." He had thought he was rescuing someone in need, offering care and protection to a vulnerable stranger. But now, Dr. Royce's words suggested something entirely different, something he had never imagined. "She is performing an Apache marriage ritual," Dr. Royce said, her voice calm but filled with admiration. "It is a tradition in which a woman may demonstrate her choice of a partner by appearing vulnerable, trusting him to care for her. Your kindness, patience, and respect have allowed her to follow this tradition. You have unknowingly participated in a ceremony that is meaningful and sacred." To him, he had been helping someone in need, nothing more. Yet here was evidence that he had been part of something much deeper, a ritual that carried generations of meaning. He looked at the young woman, who met his gaze with calm, steady eyes and a faint, knowing smile. There was no deceit in her expression, only quiet intention and purpose. "Dr. Royce continued, explaining that this ritual was meant to test the character of the person being chosen. By caring for someone who appeared vulnerable, the man demonstrated qualities of compassion, responsibility, and respect, qualities valued in a partner. Sam realized, with a mixture of surprise and awe, that the woman had been observing him just as much as he had been observing her. She had been assessing him, not for who he was on the surface, but for his heart and his character. The realization left Sam feeling a strange combination of humility and admiration. He had acted out of instinct, responding to what he thought was someone in danger, yet those same actions had fulfilled a tradition far older and more meaningful than anything he could have imagined. It was as if the universe had arranged for their paths to cross in a way that was both unexpected and deliberate. As the day unfolded, Dr. Royce guided Sam in understanding more about the rituals and their significance. She explained how the placement of stones, the careful gestures, and the patterns created with feathers and wood were all symbolic. Each movement told a story, a language of intention and respect. Sam watched as the young woman repeated some of the gestures, demonstrating with quiet precision the depth and beauty of her culture. He noticed that she moved with a grace and confidence that made every gesture seem natural, effortless, and meaningful. Her eyes held a calm focus, as if every action was intentional and guided by centuries of tradition. Sam felt a growing respect for her, not only for her strength and intelligence, but for the care with which she honored her heritage. As the afternoon sun rose higher, Sam and the young woman worked together under Dr. Royce's guidance. He began to see the ritual not as something mysterious or confusing, but as a bridge between their worlds. Every gesture, every placement of a stone or feather, was a conversation without words, a way for her to communicate choice, trust, and respect. Sam realized that he had been part of a story far bigger than himself, a story that connected generations, cultures, and human hearts. The young woman watched him closely, her eyes calm and patient. She repeated the gestures she had been performing near the stream, showing him how each movement held meaning. Sam followed carefully, learning to mirror her actions. He felt a sense of humility and wonder. He had never imagined that caring for someone could be a lesson in understanding another world, another life, so profoundly. As the afternoon stretched into evening, Dr. Royce shared stories of other rituals, explaining how they were designed to teach values such as patience, honesty, and kindness. Sam realized that the young woman had chosen a subtle, quiet way to communicate, testing him not with words or demands but with trust and expectation. Every act of care he had performed, every moment of patience, had contributed to the ritual's success. By nightfall, the ritual had reached its quiet culmination. The young woman had arranged the stones, feathers, and carvings into a pattern that Dr. Royce described as a declaration of choice. Sam looked at the arrangement, understanding finally the depth of her actions. He felt awe and gratitude, not only for the ritual itself, but for the trust she had placed in him. For a long moment they sat in silence by the fire, the room filled with quiet reflection. Sam realized that what had begun as a simple act of kindness had transformed into a profound connection. The ritual had not only revealed her intentions, but had also shown him the importance of patience, observation, and respect. He understood now that true understanding required more than words. It required empathy, attention, and a willingness to see the world through another person's eyes. The young woman looked at him, her expression calm but firm. Sam felt a sense of clarity he had never experienced before. He understood that her choice was not casual or impulsive. It was a deliberate act, guided by tradition, observation, and trust. She had chosen him not for what he said or did, but for who he was, someone capable of care, patience, and respect. Dr. Royce watched them quietly, seeing the unspoken connection between the two. "You have both learned from this," she said softly. "She has chosen wisely, and you have demonstrated the qualities that make you worthy of trust and respect. This is the beauty of these traditions. They teach lessons without words, through action and understanding." He had acted out of instinct, yet those instincts had aligned perfectly with a tradition far older and more meaningful than he could have imagined. He looked at the young woman, who returned his gaze with quiet confidence, and realized that their connection was built on more than circumstance. It was built on respect, understanding, and trust. As the night wore on, Sam reflected on the events of the past days. He had thought he was rescuing someone in need, but in reality, he had been participating in a ritual that tested character, demonstrated trust, and honored cultural heritage. The revelation had changed his perspective, showing him that life often held lessons in the most unexpected ways. He also realized that he had gained more than understanding. He had gained a bond with someone whose strength, patience, and wisdom were extraordinary. The ritual had not only revealed her choice, but had also taught him about empathy, respect, and the beauty of cultural traditions. He knew that their lives had been altered in a meaningful way, and that the quiet ranch, once ordinary, now held a sense of wonder and significance. The young woman, for her part, seemed content and calm. She had fulfilled the ritual, expressed her choice, and demonstrated her trust. Sam felt honored by her actions, recognizing the courage it took to perform a sacred tradition in a world far from her own. He understood that their connection was rare, delicate, and precious, and he vowed to honor it with the same care and respect she had shown him. By the time the stars appeared in the night sky, casting silver light across the plains, Sam sat quietly by the fire, reflecting on the day. He thought about the lessons he had learned, the importance of observation, patience, and understanding. He thought about the young woman, her calm eyes, and her quiet strength. And he realized that life had a way of teaching the most profound lessons through the simplest acts of care and respect. In that quiet, starlit evening, Sam understood something essential. The bond between them was not just about the ritual or the choice. It was about learning to see another person's world, honoring their traditions, and responding with patience, compassion, and understanding. And in that understanding, he felt a sense of connection and purpose that he had never experienced before, a connection that would shape both of their lives forever. Days after the revelation of the ritual, life at the McAllister Ranch began to settle into a new rhythm. Sam McAllister had spent the past few weeks learning more about the young woman, her culture, and the significance of her actions. He had come to understand that her choice was deliberate, meaningful, and filled with respect. And though he had initially acted out of instinct, he now realized the depth of the connection that had formed between them. The young woman moved through the ranch with a calm confidence, performing her daily routines and rituals with care. Yet she also began to interact more openly, learning the practical ways of ranch life while teaching Sam and the ranch hands about her own traditions. The balance was delicate but harmonious. Each day, Sam observed her with growing admiration, noticing how her presence brought both energy and tranquility to the once quiet homestead. One morning, Sam walked out to the fields where the young woman was tending the horses. Dusty and the other horses moved around her calmly, responding to her gentle voice and careful hands. She had a way of working with the animals that was quiet but powerful, demonstrating trust and understanding without forcing her will. Sam felt a mixture of awe and respect. He had grown up around animals all his life, yet he had never seen such harmony between a human and a creature. "You're really good with them," Sam said, breaking the silence. She looked up and smiled faintly, her dark eyes thoughtful. "They know," she said softly. "Trust." Trust was at the heart of everything she did. Trust between people, trust with the land, trust with the animals. He realized that her rituals, her actions, and even the choice she had made with him were all connected to this idea. She understood the world in a way he had only begun to grasp. As the day went on, Sam and the young woman continued their work around the ranch. She helped gather firewood, feed the livestock, and repair fences, often moving ahead with quiet efficiency. Sam noticed that her movements had a rhythm, a grace that made ordinary chores feel almost ceremonial. Even the ranch hands, who had once been cautious around her, now watched with admiration and curiosity. They began to understand that her presence was not just helpful, it brought a sense of order, respect, and dignity to the ranch. Over meals, Sam and the young woman began to share stories. Her English was limited, but she spoke with care and thoughtfulness, and Sam did his best to listen. She spoke of her family, the landscapes of her home, and the customs that shaped her life. Sam shared stories of his own upbringing on the ranch, the challenges of working the land, and the simple joys of living in the wide-open spaces of Arizona. Each story, each shared moment, brought them closer together. One evening, as the sun dipped low behind the mountains, Sam watched her arrange a circle of stones near the stream. She worked with precision, placing each stone carefully in a pattern he had come to recognize. He approached quietly, standing at a respectful distance. "You still do this?" he asked softly. She looked up at him and nodded. "Yes," she said, "for remembering, for choosing." He realized that this ritual, once mysterious and confusing, had become a symbol of their bond. It was a way of honoring trust, choice, and respect, a bridge between their worlds. He knelt beside her, helping to adjust a stone she had placed. Her eyes met his, calm and steady, and he felt a sense of understanding that needed no words. As weeks turned into months, life on the ranch continued with a gentle balance of work, learning, and shared moments. Sam and the young woman grew closer, not just as partners in the daily routines of the ranch, but as companions who had learned to understand and honor each other's worlds. Their relationship was built on respect, patience, and trust, rather than haste or expectation. The young woman taught Sam about her culture in small, deliberate ways, how to recognize the meaning behind certain patterns, the significance of gestures, and the stories carried by objects such as stones, feathers, and wood carvings. Sam listened carefully, eager to understand, and he discovered that the rituals were not just symbolic. They carried lessons about patience, observation, and empathy that could apply to all parts of life. In turn, Sam introduced her to the practical skills needed to manage a ranch. He showed her how to ride the horses across the open plains, mend fences, and tend to livestock. She absorbed these lessons quickly, blending them with her own knowledge in ways that impressed even the most experienced ranch hands. Sam realized that she was not just adapting to a new world, she was bringing her own strength and wisdom into it, creating a partnership that was stronger than either could have achieved alone. One afternoon, as they worked together to repair a broken fence, Sam paused to look at her. The sunlight highlighted the contours of her face, and her dark eyes reflected both focus and quiet curiosity. He realized that their bond had grown deeper than he could have imagined when he first found her near the stream. What had started as an act of care and protection had transformed into a meaningful connection, rooted in mutual understanding, respect, and trust. "You've changed this place," Sam said quietly. She looked at him, her expression calm but thoughtful. "We change," she said softly, "together." She had brought a new sense of awareness, respect, and calm to the ranch, and he had learned patience, understanding, and the importance of listening without judgment. Their worlds, once separate, had intertwined in a way that honored both their lives. As evening fell, they sat near the stream, watching the water flow over smooth stones. The young woman placed a small circle of stones in the water, arranging them carefully. Sam knelt beside her, adjusting a stone as she had taught him. They sat in silence, feeling the quiet strength of the ritual, the connection it represented, and the trust that had grown between them. That night, as the stars filled the sky and the ranch lay quiet, Sam reflected on the journey that had brought them together. He thought about the first time he had found her near the stream, weak and vulnerable, and how that simple act of care had led to something far greater than he could have imagined. He understood now that life had a way of teaching the most profound lessons through unexpected events, through patience, and through trust. The young woman, too, seemed to feel the weight and significance of their shared journey. She had chosen him through the ritual, demonstrating her trust, and in doing so had created a bond that honored both their worlds. Her quiet strength, patience, and wisdom had transformed not only the ranch but Sam himself, teaching him lessons about empathy, understanding, and respect that would last a lifetime. Over the following months, life at the ranch continued with a new sense of harmony. Sam and the young woman worked side by side, learning from each other, growing together, and honoring the traditions that had brought them together. Their bond deepened, built on trust, respect, and shared experience. They laughed, learned, and faced challenges together, each moment strengthening the connection between them. One bright morning, Sam watched her as she walked through the fields, her presence calm yet commanding. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for her trust, for the lessons she had taught him, and for the quiet but profound way she had changed his life. He realized that their connection was not just a product of chance. It was a meeting of hearts, cultures, and experiences that had created something rare and meaningful. In time, the ranch became a place where their worlds merged seamlessly. The young woman's traditions and rituals were honored alongside the practical work of ranch life. Sam learned to recognize the meaning behind her gestures and actions, understanding that each small act carried significance. The animals responded to her calm authority, The ranch hands respected her presence, and the land itself seemed to reflect the harmony she brought into it. As the sun set behind the distant mountains, Sam and the young woman sat together by the stream. She placed one last stone in the circle they had created, her hand steady and precise. Sam knelt beside her, adjusting a stone and feeling a deep sense of connection. They shared a quiet smile, understanding without words that their journey had transformed both their lives. Life at the McAllister Ranch was no longer ordinary. It was filled with lessons, trust, and understanding. Sam realized that sometimes the most profound changes in life came not from grand gestures, but from simple acts of care, patience, and respect. And as he sat beside the young woman, watching the stars reflected in the flowing water, he understood that the bond they had formed was a rare and precious gift, one that would continue to grow, guide, and inspire them both for the rest of their lives.